say, silly games of second guessing. I just forget the lessons that I couldn't learn, because one street over there's a life I could have known, would have kept me from the one I had today.
Good morning, Robertson County. Brand new week. This is 1100 at WSGI. I'm Utah Laverne, and this is One Street Over. And yay! For the second time in a organized fashion, we have got Senator Kerry Roberts in the house, and we can thank Janet for getting us on your schedule every fourth Monday, right? Right. Well, with the addendum that there is going to be, I don't know, there was one Monday there's a fifth Monday, and so I think there's one month that you'll have to remind me. There's one time that I think it may be coming on Halloween. Yeah, so I'm thinking you're coming Halloween. No. I'm not a dress-up person. They're supposed to be dressing up at school today. And
what if I
pajamas? You just go right ahead.
That sounds like a politician.
Right. You don't dress up like one of the old politicians, like with the, I don't know, I bet Danny Ashley could find you something. He's got all kinds of.
On and dress up like Adams.
There you go.
George Washington.
There you go. Do something like that. That'd be fine. But he's going to be with us, and Janet and I are working it out, but he's going to be with us pretty much on every fourth Monday, and except when we have just to make little adjustments. But we've had that rotation with Congressman Rose, and so that's been really nice on the second Monday, and so we're going to try to get that going. Do you know Congressman Green?
Yeah.
Do you know him? Well, you need to.
Very well.
You need to hook me up
we're
with
good
him.
friends.
Okay. Well, I need to know him because I don't think I've ever met him.
No way.
No, seriously.
How have you managed not to meet him?
Well, because when I stepped away from being chairman, I stepped away from politics completely, and so I haven't sought it out anymore. And so, there for a few years, I was seeking those opportunities, and I just feel God leading me in a completely different direction. So I'm going that way.
You just added like 10 years to your life by not being involved in politics.
Yeah, and I don't know that I won't ever step back in, but I don't think so.
It's
we'll see.
Well, it's very it's a crazy world in which we live, and it's kind of hard to see how there's been a fork in the road, and people have gone left or they've gone right, and it doesn't. For all the talk about trying to get people on the same page, it gets harder and harder to see how that's going to happen without divine intervention.
I'm in complete agreement. And I talk a lot about the person who I'm studying with. I'm doing a lot of biblical study, and my favorite right now is Christy McClellan. And she's a professor down at Williamson College in Franklin, and she's the one who wrote the Women in Jesus study. And she's gotten grabbed up by Lifeway, and she's just exploded worldwide now. But anyway, she says something. I think she's quoting a rabbi that she met, because she studied extensively in Israel. And I think it's a rabbi that she's quoting when she says, be very wary, and a messianic rabbi, but be very wary of any wary. Yeah, I don't know, for some reason
you're trying to make it southern.
Yeah, and for some reason it just wasn't forming up. It wasn't forming up in my head. Be very wary of Christians who spend all their time telling you about what they're against, and rather than what they're for.
That's right.
And so I think that's something that we have really gone down a rabbit hole.
Yes.
And that we think that it's like, well, that's wrong, so I've got to pound my fist. If you just be Jesus to them, they'll find their way.
So,
or if they don't, it's not on you. You just got to be Jesus.
I would highly recommend if people enjoy listening to sermons. There's a guy in Cookeville, Tennessee named Bobby Davis, who is the pastor at Life Church in Cookeville.
I listen to him all the time.
You know Bobby.
I know Bobby.
You know Bobby.
Yeah, I know Bobby. He's fabulous.
Bobby has a series right now called
You're not gonna. No, that's somebody else. Identity Crisis. That's the one he's doing right now.
Yes. Yeah.
I just listened to this yesterday. He's probably. I listened. There's several.
Okay.
I mean, of course,
people need to. Okay.
Oh,
last week and the week before.
Oh yeah.
people need to hear this. I mean, his point is so true. I mean, if we look at John 10:10, what does it say? The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And he talks about identity theft. What is it that somebody's trying to steal with identity theft? They're not trying to steal you. They're trying to steal your stuff, right? They don't want to be you. They just want your stuff. You know, if I'm stealing your identity, I don't want to be Laverne. I just want to have whatever Laverne has, or I want to take it away from her. Right. And that's his point about Satan, is Satan wants to take away your identity. And what is your identity? And by the way, this is such a larger issue in society today, because people are just beating the table saying, I want you to acknowledge my identity. Well, what is your identity? My identity is what I think it is today. And look, I'm sorry if that offends people, but we've gotten into this thing where you know what, Laverne, there is a whole lot of knowledge. There is very little wisdom.
And they become fools in their wisdom, or is that scripture?
That is scripture. Yeah, the fools think they're wise, basically. But we're confusing knowledge and wisdom, and there's a real lack of wisdom. But anyway, to Bobby's point, is that Satan is trying to steal your identity. And what is your identity? Well, you're a child of God. Amen. You're a child of God. And it doesn't matter whether we're red, yellow, black, or white, you know, we are a child of God. And the other thing too, that he hasn't spent some time on, so this is Kerry bonus sermon. You know what? We got to quit getting our feelings hurt. Yep. You know, when we grew up and somebody said something that we didn't like, in the classroom, at home, on the ball field, whatever. What did your mom or dad tell you?
Sticks and stones may
break my bones, but words will
never hurt me.
That's right. Yeah, and we've got a whole generation now that said, what did he say? Well, let's go talk to him. Yeah. You know, you can't, talking about biblical advice, you can't make foolish people wise. You can't make people who say stupid stuff suddenly smart. You can't take mean people and make them nice. The only thing you can control is your reaction to things. And if somebody says something that you don't like, I think one of the greatest signs of human maturity is you shrug your shoulders and you move on. Well, first of all, you evaluate whether or not it's true, right? If you say something about me that I don't like, the first thing that I need to do is I need to decide, is there truth to what you're speaking? Right. Is there wisdom in what you're saying? Is there some kind of reevaluation that I need to go through? Or is it just utter nonsense? And you know what? If it's nonsense, then shame on you. I move on. But that's what this cancel culture has become. You say something that I don't like, I'm going to cancel you. Right. And that's wrong. That's morally wrong. It's ethically wrong. You know, let the people who say stupid stuff or stuff that you don't like live their life. Yeah. And we have the First Amendment for a reason. There's a tremendous amount of wisdom in the First Amendment. And the freedom of the First Amendment never guaranteed that only the things that would come out of a person's mouth would be true, responsible, helpful, whatever. That was not the point of the First Amendment. Doug Henry, the famous Tennessee state senator, many years, Democrat, who had more common sense than a lot of legislators today, said, well, part of the thing about freedom is the freedom to be stupid.
There you go. So, and I mean, and all you got to do, you talk about the freedom of speech. Go and look at some of the early elections and look at some of the nonsense that they would spew out of their mouths about each other. That was just complete nonsense. But it was just, but they were free to do it, and people knew that they were just being, they were being salacious and all this, And
it's not worse than it is today. No. And that's what a lot of people we look at these cycles in our history. And we can see how Adams went after Jefferson and vice versa. And these things about being blood suckers and leeches and whatever else they said.
All the stuff that was said about Andrew Jackson's bride.
I mean, let me tell you, if you think if you despise Donald Trump or you despise Joe Biden, let me tell you that for all the people upset about Joe Biden's speech or Donald Trump's rallies, I would tell you in the 17 and 1800s, much worse was said about political opponents. It just wasn't amplified through the voice of social media.
That's just it. And all you got to do is just make a short, just a quick study of it. And we have stuck.
Well, that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make
no, it doesn't. But it's just saying that it's nothing new, and that's what freedom. I had one of my students said something, and somebody said, "God, do you believe they just said?" I said, "They're free to say it. They're free to say it," and it was nothing terrible. But I was like, "That's what freedom of speech is all about, y'all."
But here's the thing too: is when we long for the good old days, we sometimes have this misperception that everybody loved Jesus, everybody went to church on Sunday mornings, and everybody, gathered around and prayed together. Well, when we were contemplating this, what I call this grand experiment in self-governance, one of the things that society went through at that time was, are we a moral enough people to govern ourselves? Because they wanted to do what with George Washington? They wanted to make him a king, right? And so this national soul searching, if you will, really revolved around the fact of, are we good enough? And to put this in context, right here in this area, and we've talked about this before, as Kentucky became a territory and as the country was moving west, it was like the heathens. It was estimated that less than 1 out of 12 people would be considered moral or religious. And it was the swindlers, the counterfeiters, the con men, the crooks, the thieves, the murderers, whatever, that were pushing west to get away from what? To get away from the polite society, the organized society, the moral society. And young people today don't realize that Yale and Harvard started out as Bible colleges.
They have no clue. Yeah,
no clue. And so the theologians at Yale and Harvard were wringing their hands over this lack of morality that was pushing west, and what would America become? If these people went out and settled, they're going to be a law unto themselves, and it's just going to be a complete disaster. Well, it was in that context that Reverend McCready started preaching at the Red River Meeting House in June of 1800, just not more than 15, 20 miles from where we sit today,
right,
at the Red River Meeting House. What happened? The spiritual awakening of 1800. And out of that, it was so pervasive in terms of its effect. I mean, if you go up there today, it's very rural. I mean, there are big farms up there that farm thousands of acres. There's not a big population base. I don't know where all these people came from, but hundreds, if not thousands of people came to these camp meetings to hear this preaching, and they were impacted by the Holy Spirit to the extent that they went back to where they were from, and they propagated this wave of spiritual renewal. And of course, you and I grew up in a Church of Christ background, and we trace the Restoration movement back to literally to this. I mean, we talk about later in the 1800s because we talk about Cane Ridge, and we talk about Barton W. Stone and Alexander Campbell, but the origins, the genesis of this was really the spiritual revival of 1800. So I say all of that to say, for anyone who's just completely discouraged by the way things are today, we've been here before.
Oh yeah.
It looks a lot different. We were not dealing with drag queen shows targeting children. And let me just tell you right now, if you're all in favor of drag queens doing what they do, hey, good on you, but there is something wrong with you if you think that's okay in front of children.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry. That is wrong, wrong, wrong. If somebody wants to dress up as a drag queen and they want to go to some club someplace that has obscenities on the walls and things like that, and there's a photograph that I'm not even going to say what it says. If that's what you want to do and that's adult entertainment to you, then, I'm sorry you like that, but that's your decision. But the moment you bring children into that environment, somebody needs to go to jail.
You bet.
And that's it. Yep. If you're going to simulate sex acts in front of a child, and you're going to applaud that, and let me tell you, if you're a parent taking your child to watch that trash, you need to go to jail too. That is immoral. That's wrong. We're talking about simulated sex acts in front of children. It's wrong. It's the same thing, all this grief that we got about school libraries. If you've got one 12-year-old boy being pictured having anal sex with another 12-year-old boy, and it's in a school library or it's in Springfield Library, someone needs to go to jail. If that's a picture, it's child pornography, and someone's going to go to jail for 7 years. But if it's a drawing, somehow that's protected by the First Amendment. That is sick, that's twisted, it's wrong, and we have those books across Tennessee in both our public libraries and in our schools. So to tie all this together, we have evil in a different kind of way than the evil we had in 1800. But what do we know about light? The moment you flip on a light switch, what happens? The darkness is gone.
Yeah,
and so the answer to all this, and the answer to people's identities, all these people that are struggling with their identity, your identity is in Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And because we push God out of the public square, nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to have that conversation. And there's a whole generation of people that don't know that that's the answer. Mm-hmm. And to your point, it's not that we condemn people. It's that we show people who Jesus Christ is and let them draw their own conclusion. I can't change somebody else's mind. Goodness knows at age 61, I have tried several times in my life to change people's mind, and all it is an exercise in frustration. The better thing to do is to introduce somebody to Jesus Christ, let them get to know Jesus and see what happens in their life, because it's transformative. Will everyone transform? No. If that were the case, there would be no evil in the world today. Jesus came 2,000 some years ago. Surely by now all the evil would be gone if just because people got exposed to Jesus, they became a great person. It doesn't work that way. Satan still has a hold. But I love the idea of the fact that as terrible as things are right now, there's a lot of opportunity. Mm-hmm. There's a whole lot of opportunity. And Jesus told the parable about the weeds in the field and the wheat growing together. And what do? Do we go pull the weeds? No, you'll tear up the wheat. Let them grow together. So for all this evil we see growing, guess what that means? There's good that's growing too.
You bet.
And it's there. You just have to look for it sometimes. But showing people Jesus Christ in our actions, in our words, in our deeds is what turns things around. If you are looking for a political solution, the political problem that we have today is a manifestation of the spiritual problem that we have today.
Amen.
Poverty that we have today is a manifestation of a spiritual problem. All these ills and problems that we have in society are a manifestation of a spiritual problem. So you can't find a welfare solution. You can't find a political solution. You can't find a financial solution. It's not there. Mm-hmm. And if you want a real solution, you solve the spiritual problem. And then, the rest of this stuff tends to take care of itself. And, that's, it's just amazing to me how many people are believers, and yet we don't believe that Jesus is the answer. And nobody, that's more like, oh wow, I never really thought about it that way. Not like, well, no, Jesus is not the answer, but we just got to start praying. Bobby Davis, man, blessings on him.
He's fabulous.
He took all the drag queen stuff in Cookeville, Tennessee, and he said, am I going to condemn him? No, I'm going to pray for him.
Yeah.
The answer to that problem is for them to get to know Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And I can't shove Jesus down somebody's throat, can I? So can't mandate it, can't pass a law, don't need to. What we need to do is just start living our faith.
Yep. I love it. I just think it's hysterical because people who listen all the time, apparently you don't. They hear me talk about Bobby all the time. I quote Bobby a lot. But my kids went to his church when they were out there. Yeah. And that's how I got to know them. And they're not, I don't have anybody out there now, but I don't think I've missed, there's not too many of his sermons I've missed because I've gone back and watched the archives. He's got, oh my goodness, you can go and
common sense.
Yes, go to the
Common
podcast
sense.
and you can just sit and just
Yeah.
listen. There's so much stuff there, and he'll
Wrapped
start.
up in a lot of country.
Oh my gosh, love him. Just
'Cause
love
he's
him.
from
He
Bangham.
is fabulous. And he's somebody that struggled with drugs and came
yeah.
out of it. I mean, you talk about a testimony.
He was a
Powerful.
pastor's kid
Yeah,
who was
that nearly
determined to be
died
the
on
wild
drugs.
child.
Yeah. And just an amazing story. But one of my favorite things I've heard him say, there's been two or three things. Probably the transformation for me coming out of politics and stepping away and just going a different direction is he had said one morning, after some things happened politically that everybody was wringing their hands over, and I that was the moment where I just turned it off and started giving God my first fruits, and my
Yeah.
life has changed. Well, at the same time, Bobby taught a lesson. He says people were coming up to him and going, "Well, the election didn't go the way that people of real conservative people wanted it," and he's like, people were asking me, "Well, what are you going to do?" And he goes, "Well, I voted. What do you want me to do?" He says, "You got to remember, if it's within your power to affect it or change it, it's your responsibility. If it's not within your power to affect it or change it, it's not your responsibility. Give it to God."
Oh,
And that's all there is to it.
yeah.
And it's powerful. And then he said another thing that I repeat a lot, and he's talking about trying to understand why people are just so angry that don't agree with faith-based conservatism. And I say faith-based conservatism because there's a lot of conservatives out there that ain't faith-based, y'all.
Right, right.
I'm just saying.
Right.
I go to God and Jesus first, and then the rest of it comes in line after that. And if it doesn't line up with that, I'm sorry. I just don't want nothing to do with it. But he said, whenever it comes down to why people are so angry when you won't say everything's fine, yes, you're wonderful, that's the way to live. He said it's because every single one of us were created in the image of God. Mm-hmm. And he says, even those of us who realize it and accept it, we work with that. But those who don't accept it still were, and in their heart, they know there's a conflict going on, and their own conscience condemns them.
Yeah.
And I just think, man, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And one of the traps that we fall into as believers is we pray to God to bless our plans, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember the book, The Prayer of Jabez, that went around, 15, 20 years ago. Lord, I'm going to pray to increase my territory and look at all the good things
It
that
got
happen.
kind of wonky.
Yeah, we're missing the point,
Yeah.
right? The prayer is the prayer of Jesus, not my will,
Yeah.
but your will be done. And this is what I tell my kids. I say, you know what? We don't need to pray for God to be on our team. We need to pray that we're on God's team. We need to pray that not for God to bless what we're doing, but we need to pray for God to reveal what he's doing and show us how we get to play a role in that. Because, God created you. He has intentions for you. He has a purpose for you. And if you spend all your life saying, well, God, I want to go in this direction, please change your mind, God, and bless me. I mean, it's probably not going to have a very good outcome. And maybe it does. Maybe God says, okay, I'll change my mind and I'll do this. But I don't really think that's the way it works. But maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know the mind of God. But where I think you absolutely positively cannot go wrong is to say, God, you created me in your image. You have a purpose for me. Reveal to me what that purpose is. Yeah. Give me the strength, give me the courage, give me the wisdom, give me the insight. Help me to overcome fear and help me to pursue what it is that you put in front of me. Show it to me and then give me the courage and the ability to do it. And I think that's such a far better prayer because that really imitates the prayer of Jesus, not my will, but your will be done. It's also, the Lord's Prayer. It's let your kingdom come here on earth. Let your kingdom be here on earth as it is in heaven. I mean, you're kind of praying the same prayer. It's all about you, God, what you want to have done. Just open my eyes and let me see it, and then give me the courage to do it.
Amen. I love it. Senator Kerry Roberts in the house with us, talking about, I don't know, whatever we saw we want to talk about.
We're talking about the important stuff, and
yes,
that's the sad thing. I mean,
yeah.
people want to talk about politics, and they want to talk about what's going to happen in the midterms and stuff like that. It doesn't matter who wins in November. If this nation, if you want to see a nation that gets blessed by God, it's because people humbly get on their knees before God, they confess their sin, they repent, and they pray to be filled with God's Holy Spirit and get up and walk in wisdom and walk in the insight that he's given us and start serving other people. Wow, how many problems would take care of themselves if we got out of our own agenda and started taking on God's agenda?
Amen. Amen. Well said. And speaking with Senator Kerry Roberts this morning, if you have questions, be sure and put them up in the comments and we will share those. We do need to pause and take a break real quickly. I'm going to talk about my friends over at Veterans Motorplex. Now, if you're looking for their Facebook page, go on to, you'll find them at Highland Rim Speedway, but you'll see that all the banners and all of those things have been changed to Veterans Motorplex. I think whenever they took over the speedway, they just kind of kept that so they could keep the followers that they had along with us, so they could market to them and say, hey, here's what's going on. So I'll just speak that to you right now. So find them at Highland Rim Speedway. Go on their Facebook page, and Jerry's great at keeping you up to date about everything that's happening every single week. Well, the first time that I went out there, I couldn't help myself, man. I was showing, I kept going live and showing all the stuff that was going on there because it was so exciting. I was just stunned at how exciting and how much fun they have out at Veterans Motorplex. And it's happening every Saturday night through November. That's their racing season. It goes from spring through fall, and they go pretty much as long as they can until the weather gets bad. But you're going to see exciting racing happening every single Saturday night. I know everybody came together for the demolition derby and monster trucks and all those kinds of things at the fairgrounds. Fair was absolutely fabulous. If you didn't make it to the fair, shame on you. It was wonderful. But you get the same kind of feel at Veterans Motorplex every single Saturday night. Gates open at 4. Racing starts at 6. You're going to have so much fun. It goes for about 3 hours, and they start with some of the lower stuff, and then they have that big race right at the end. It's exciting. It is so much fun. And if you want to go, I'll hook you up with a 8-pack of tickets. 6 minor kids, 2 adults can go. If you'll just message me, my phone number 615-594-7736, 615-594-7736. Just text me. Don't call me right now because I'm in the middle of the show. But you can text me and I'll hook you up. Just say, hey, I want tickets to the races, and I will hook you up. But if you don't win tickets, $40 will get you that 8-pack of tickets to take your whole family. Got a great concession stand. They always have fun games going on. It is just great fun. A great family resource and entertainment source right here in Robertson County, Veterans Motorplex. Get by there this weekend. And when you do, and the weather's perfect for it right now, be sure and tell them that U-Turn sent you. And back to the show. We got Senator Kerry Roberts with us right now. We're just talking about all the things that are going on in the county. We're going to start in his district, which is 5 counties. How many counties in your
it's
district?
5. It's Robertson, Cheatham, Dixon, Hickman, and Humphreys, but it's soon to be part of Montgomery. So I have... So the redistricting kicks in after the November election.
Oh, after so for you guys, right after the election.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay.
Things change for us. Wow, I guess there could be a technicality there, but yeah, I think it's a midnight election day.
Okay, because or
the day after 12:01 the day after election.
Yeah, because if you're John doesn't hand the reins over to Congressman Rose, they don't hand the reins over to Congressman Green until January when they're sworn into the new.
That's a great question, but I know practically speaking, the next day, first of all, if you win an election, you become a state employee at 12:01 p.m.
Oh, okay.
You don't actually get sworn in until January.
Okay.
But you start representing that district. So a couple of changes are going to occur. First of all, and by the way, I don't have any opponents, so if I sound like I'm overly confident that I'm going to win, I just would say, well, I would say if I don't win this election, that means somebody mounted a write-in campaign that probably creates more political history than ever in the
it'd be one of the history books for sure.
So yeah, I'm not just presuming that I'm going to win. It's that I don't have an opponent. So 2 things change. One is it's no longer Senate District 25. It's Senate District 23. And they had to renumber them because of population shifts. You do this every 10 years, and you do it after the census. And So we reapportioned the districts. So part of that involved doing some renumbering, and that's kind of getting into the weeds as to why they did that. But we go from 25 to 23. And by the way, let me just say that whenever you do this redistricting, a lot of people were upset about it, and as it relates to congressional redistricting. And I would just simply say there is so much law that you have to observe when you do it. And at the end of the day, if you don't like it, you can sue. And the bottom line is that the lawsuits were filed in very friendly courts to the other side of the aisle, and none of those lawsuits prevailed. So
What does that tell you?
yeah, I mean,
There's no
they may not
standing.
like it, and
Yeah,
I
there's
think the
just no
biggest
standing
the
to
biggest
challenge it.
criticism was from Nashville, because
Yeah.
Nashville was one congressional district, and the way they did it was they split Nashville not quite into thirds, but they gave the congressmen in the surrounding areas a portion of Nashville. And there, beyond the politics of that it basically made it impossible for a Democrat to win that seat. So there's your political aspect. But the practical aspect is, do you really want Nashville to be isolated as an island within all of these halo counties? And I would say no. Now, Nashville obviously would say yes. But those of us that live in the halo around Nashville, we want the decision makers in Nashville to have to respect the halo counties, because what they do affects us. I mean, every decision they make of consequence is going to reverberate through the halo counties. So by taking a John, Rose, a Mark Green, etc., and giving all of them a portion of Nashville, it kind of forces them to think about the impact of their decisions on the surrounding counties.
Right.
It also, and this is the positive that nobody wants to talk about, it also gives Nashville 3 congressmen that care about Nashville. I mean, that's a real plus to Nashville that gets lost in all of this, is when Mayor Cooper needs something, he's got 3 different congressmen who have a vested interest in Nashville to call. I mean, well, if you look at the congressional delegation in Tennessee, if you've got 3 congressmen that care about what you're doing, tell me a downside to that. So it's been, again, social media amplifies stupid stuff. It's really not a bad thing at all. Would Cooper would a Democrat have kept that seat? Possibly, but I don't know with the 2022 election that a Democrat would have won it anyway. But I mean, my personal opinion is I think that November is going to be pretty ugly for the Democrats, and part of it is just the midterm
It happens
pushback.
almost always during
it happens every other election, right? But I think this one's going to be worse.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll see, but I may or may not be right, and that's fine. But it just traditionally that's what happens. So anyway, so we go from 25 to 23, and I pick up part of Montgomery County.
Okay.
So I have 5 and a point,
Yeah.
5 point something counties. But you know what? It's 225,000 people. And hey, I'm just going to say, for the people who say you don't answer your cell phone anymore, I'm going to say you're right. You know what? I made a mistake. I'm a well-intended mistake, but when I campaigned in 2014, I publicized my cell phone number everywhere. Okay? Now, I don't literally have 225,000 people who have my cell phone number, but the number of people that have my mobile number, it's off all the time. The ringer's always off, and the do not disturb is on, because literally somebody will get off, do the night shift, they'll get off at 1 o'clock a.m. and something's on their mind, and they call, or they text, or they email. So I've gotten to where I don't, my phone is basically for emergency use. If you want something and you need a fast response, please call the office. It's not, it's just practical. It's just practical. I'm not, that's all I can say. And I've thought about getting a different number and changing it, and I thought, well, that's probably not a good idea. And of course, nobody listening to this is sympathetic at all, because I'm an elected official, and they're just like, well, you signed up for it. And that's true. But it's, I don't, at this point, I don't even know why I have a cell phone. So,
Well, and I go to Janet, and I mean, because I mean, you and I are pretty good friends. We've known each
Yeah.
other a long time, but I have discovered that if I really want to get on your calendar, I need to go through
Yeah,
her.
well,
Because you've got a
yeah.
lot of people. I mean, you're
Yeah.
dealing with a lot of different stuff,
Yeah.
and I get that.
and we don't have a staff. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at like John Rose, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
he's got 20 people on his
Yeah.
staff, and I've got Janet and I've got Trey.
Yep.
And you know, so a House member, there are 99 House members in Tennessee. There are 33 senators. So we've got 3 times the district, but yet the House member has a legislative assistant, and I have a legislative assistant. So Dr. Kumar has a legislative assistant. So do I. We don't get 3 times the staff. We've got 1 staff person that's got to manage all this. I happen to have an extra staff member because I'm a chairman, and so the analyst for the committee that I chair is also in my office. So that's
Right.
Trey Jones, my analyst. So I'm lucky I've got an extra staff member, but technically, you know, his job is to deal with the government operations committee that I chair. So, yeah, so I just laugh when I say, I know probably nobody's sympathetic. That, you know, everybody has there are two wrong impressions that people have. Number one is that we have a lot of staff. We don't. That
Not on the
was it.
state
It's like
level
me, myself,
at
and
all.
I, right?
Yep.
And the other thing is they think that we get paid like the people in Washington. And I've said this before, but we get paid about $25,000 a year. And you could make a pretty good argument that it costs you more to do it than you actually make.
Yeah.
And we don't have an expense account. And that's something I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about all the different organizations that ask for donations and ask for dues and stuff like that. They just think that I can run it through an expense account, and I don't have one. I mean,
Yeah.
it either comes out of my own pocket or
Your campaign
my
funds.
campaign, and that means that I ask you for money just to, you know, give it
Yep.
to somebody else, and that's, I've kind of gotten away from, you know, it used to be I felt like I had to join everything, and there are a lot of great organizations out there that you want to join, you want to be a part of, but I mean, I literally probably get asked for $15,000-$20,000 a year at least in membership, sponsorships, you know, charity stuff, whatever the case might be. And I would drive myself crazy trying to raise the campaign funds to cover that. And I just said, you know, I just can't do that anymore. So,
And there are politicians that do make pretty decent money, but they're very few and far between in the state.
Yeah.
And when it comes to even the local level. And I'm not going to get into all that, but what's asked of them, it's worth a lot of money because you give your life over. And I'm personally believe that our state senators and our representatives should be paid more than what they're getting paid.
Well,
because it
yeah.
has become a full-time job,
Yeah.
and it is not full-time pay.
well,
And,
that is true. It is a full-time job. It's not
Yeah.
full-time pay. But I also I go back and forth on it because a lot of things, what happens a lot too is people say, enough's enough. I'm not going to run for re-election. I've got to make some money or whatever. And you know, all these proposals for term limits and things. Well, the average tenure of a legislator in Tennessee is less than the term limits. Most people serve less than 12 years, and most of your term limit proposals probably end up being around 12 years.
Right.
And so I don't know. I go back and forth on the pay, and I also the other thing too is the insider trading that you see in Washington doesn't happen in Tennessee. I mean,
Right.
it's a completely different animal. If there are legislators in Tennessee who get rich over being a state legislator, I haven't seen it in my service. And we had some very highly publicized things that happened in our history of Tennessee, you know, Rocky Top, Tennessee Waltz, things like that. The reporting, disclosure, transparency, ethics, all the stuff that we have, you know, maybe somebody's getting rich doing it, but I don't know who that would be.
Right.
So I mean, we have to disclose where all our income comes from. We're all subject to being an audit. Our campaigns are subject to an audit. A lobbyist can't even buy us a cup of coffee. It's really, the lobbyists are under a lot of scrutiny as well. You know, lobbyist is automatically a bad word to a lot of people in Tennessee, but yet the lobbyists who serve in Tennessee, for the most part, are attorneys who are very aware of the ethics. They're very professional. And I made the comment to Diane the other day that we're very blessed in Tennessee. We've got a lot of good lobbyists. It's not the caricature that you see in Washington. Most of these people are subject matter experts, they're attorneys, and they're actually very helpful whether they are for or against a bill, because when you're evaluating a bill, it's really smart to get both sides of the story. And when you've got people who are subject matter experts who are very well educated on whether or not you ought to be doing X, Y, or Z, it's really, really helpful to help you make a good decision. And you may vote against them, but you at least know what you're voting against because they came into your office and they made a really good argument about why they think such and such is a bad idea.
Very good.
And so it's really helpful. That's one of the things that I think it's really hard to communicate to people, is that not everyone who's a lobbyist is a bad person. Of course, for most of the companies, they call them like government affairs and stuff. They don't even call them a lobbyist. They give them a different title because they know there's baggage that comes with that name.
Very good. Hey, let's pause for a second. And I do have a question. Did this work for you, this password?
Yeah.
Oh, good. We were trying to get him hooked in to where he could tap in and have access to the internet.
And you haven't asked me anything that requires...
Yeah, I know. I kind of noticed that, so I wasn't really sure. I'm going to ask you a question. I've got a question from the buses here in just a minute for you, but
okay.
But we're going to unpack... well, let me go ahead and give you the question, and that way if you need to look anything up while I'm doing the break. So my husband is the safety coordinator for the Robeson County Schools buses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things that he realized whenever they brought him in, he, Mr. Hireman, all the people that work there, he works for Mr. Hireman is the director. Mm-hmm. He even drives a bus. They all fill in, and because there's so many drivers missing. Well, one of the first days he's on his new job, he has to go out and drive a route, and it's dark. It's dark 30. It's very early, and they give them a written guide by guide. He's driving. He has no one there with him to help him. It's dark, and he's supposed to know where to go get people, and it's a written piece of paper. There's no way he can see it. That
sounds dangerous, doesn't it?
Highly dangerous. Highly dangerous. Well, the reason why is because it is, again, and this is a lot to do with some things that happened where kids were hurt, somebody was on a cell phone. They cannot have their cell phone even out. Instead of being able to look at GPS on cell phones, they can't have it out. That it's against the law. Okay, and there's also a law, and based upon that terrible wreck that happened, I'm wanting to say, was it in Knoxville or Chattanooga, where a bunch of kids got killed, the guy that was very young. You can't have anybody under 25 in Tennessee driving a bus, and you can't have any kind of a cell phone out. Well, there's two things there. Number one, the cell phone issue. GPS pops up on most cars, and so they're trying to get the funds to be able to get tablets to where they can put in there so they could technically use those. It's just stupid. It's just a stupid little nuance of the law that's preventing them from being able to watch a GPS and have a GPS help guide them, to be able to find the kids when they're having to fill in on a bus that they've not driven. It's crazy. And our district is in the process of trying to get these pads, the tablets on the bus to where they can do that, but it's still a high expense, and there's the technology that goes along with it. Some districts can't even think about affording it. I can't imagine what some of the poor districts in Tennessee have to do in that regard. So it's something that needs some attention, is taking a look at the laws that prevent that technically will prevent a driver from being able to use a cell phone to try to map a route that they're not familiar with, and also, too, the age limit on drivers, and which was strictly political, that they did this up the age, and now they're desperate for drivers. I mean, just there's so many need for drivers. It's really kind of funny. The guy up in Sumner County put a bus right on the county line going, come work for us, trying to get our drivers. I mean, it's very competitive back and forth. And I think Mr. Heinerman was like, come on, no, get that, because it's right on the line. And so it's a big competition between counties. But nonetheless, there's some big issues in regards to regulations about the ages and whether or not they can look at a GPS when they're trying to drive. But I mean, GPS is a whole lot safer than, okay, what does this say here? And I'm trying to drive the bus down country roads. I mean, to hear my husband describe it, I think that's probably a big safety issue. But so I'm going to plant that seed, and then I'm going to go ahead and talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with the Exit Realty Garden Gate team, my friends. I met them at the Kilgore Station Bluegrass Festival up in Cross Plains. That's where they live. They've been there for over 20 years, so they know Robertson County. If you want to know the nuances of being buying or selling property in Robertson County, you need somebody that knows this area, and they're one of us. So they'll even say, they said, whether you use us or not, use somebody that understands the county, because it's just so much going on here. And they also invite you to come be a part of the Exit Realty Garden Gate team. Rebecca came out of a radiology background, and somebody said to her, you'd be a great realtor. And she said, that does sound interesting. And now she is a fabulous realtor. One of the first in the area to be a seniors real estate specialist. You've got Barry that came along out of a marketing background. He was a vice president of a marketing company for many years, went full-time with real estate, about 4 or 5 years ago, and they are just a great team, and they would love to bring you on the team. And they also say, buying or selling, whatever your need is, come and talk to us. You can connect with them at sellwithbecky.com or buy.robertson.county.com. Don't let that little buy Robertson County fool you. They specialize in Robertson County properties, but they also buy and sell in the surrounding counties and across the state line in Kentucky. They would love to talk to you. You can call them at 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425. Connect with them at sellwithbecky.com or buy.robertsoncounty.com. And please always let them know that you turned some Senator Kerry Roberts. What say you to what I just said about the message?
So we talk a lot about unintended consequences, and of course a lot of legislation gets passed on political reaction.
Right.
And so a great example right now, everybody is very outraged over this Vanderbilt transgender clinic thing, okay? So
you got to fill me in because I pay no attention to the news anymore. So
basically Matt Walsh, who if you've not seen the movie What is a Woman, you need to see it, and it'll probably make your blood boil regardless of what side of the political spectrum on, just for different reasons. But despite all of the presence of experts in the movie, he can't seem to get an answer to that fundamental question. And but it goes far deeper than that. It's not just sticking a microphone in front of someone and asking a question, but they really explore this question. But he broke a story a week ago where there's a video of a doctor at Vanderbilt. Basically, I watched the video, and basically, here's what I took away from the video. She's encouraging people at Vanderbilt to push the surgery on kids because it's a big moneymaker. And if you do what they call the bottom surgery, it's a really big moneymaker because they keep having to come back for multiple surgeries. God. So that to me was, it was all about money. It was all about money. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was, somebody else from Vanderbilt basically said, if you've got religious or moral objections to this, you need to get over it, or you need to work someplace else. And so it was not a good look on Vanderbilt whatsoever. Mm-mm. And gender affirming care. Let me ask you a question, and Laverne, if people don't know that you wrote a book where you address this yourself from your own upbringing and your own, your own
blog.
desire.
It was just a blog, yeah.
I thought it was in your book too.
Maybe I touch on it a little bit.
It was in your book. Yeah.
Maybe a little bit. Okay. Maybe a little bit. But yeah.
But this idea that I'm young and I wish I was a boy.
Right.
And
I was a tomboy.
Yeah. And for people who don't know this, Laverne has a very poignant story about growing up and wishing that she was a boy, and finally at some point in her life just realizing that what a fabulous life you have, and a fulfilling life. Mm-hmm. And it's a story that is more relevant now than ever. Yeah. And as the transgender movement is sweeping across the country, but this is just, it's going to be investigated. A law will get passed, and the question is, will it be the right law that gets passed, or will the pendulum swing from one thing to the other? But what I started to ask is this: why is gender affirming care limited in its definition to sticking you under the knife? Well, I mean, I am legitimately asking a question. Why is it that gender affirming care is solely, we're going to change your physical nature, versus why are we not doing counseling to see if there is gender dysphoria that maybe can get dealt with on counseling? Now, maybe it can't be, but doesn't common sense, and I said we have a lot of knowledge, but we don't have a lot of wisdom, doesn't common sense say that we ought to have this discussion about why you experience gender dysphoria before we actually put you under the knife?
Amen.
Why is gender affirming care to skip that step and go directly into drugs and surgery? And to a parent who's struggling right now with a child who's on TikTok and on social media, and they're getting bombarded with, I know you were born a girl, but maybe you're a boy. And as you're being bombarded with this, here is a sad thing for a parent. The sad thing is the parent takes their child to be professionally evaluated. And if you read Abigail Schreier's book, who, by the way, is not a conservative, Yale, Oxford, Columbia, Wall Street Journal reporter who wrote this just seminal work on this transgender cult, as she calls it.
Right.
They're rubber stamping this and sending them directly to drugs and surgery. Okay, that is medical malpractice.
Big time.
On any kind of level. You should be able to spend time with that child and discover, why do you think what you think? And you know what? Why do we not let children vote?
Because they're not old enough.
Why do we not let them drive a car? Why do we
decisions.
not let them buy a gun? Why do we not let them do a lot of things? And then suddenly, gender affirming care, mandates that we let an 8-year-old tell us that what their identity is, and oh, by the way, that could change.
Right.
At some point. Maybe it doesn't change tomorrow, maybe it doesn't change next year. But how long did you go through this?
Very long time.
Years.
Yeah, and I mean, if
years.
you go,
If I recall from reading, you went through this for years.
on up into puberty, to where there's, and I didn't talk about this in the blog, but I've talked about it in a couple of other things. But I can remember sitting with my mother and her best friend Inez at Grant's up in Mayfield at the lunch thing. They had the little lunch things, and they were trying to explain to me what was going to happen as I became a woman, and they were telling me all these things. I'm like, well, I'm just not going to do that. And because I was approaching the age of when I was going to start my period or whatever like that and so I was, and they were trying to prepare me for it, and I was like, well, I'm just not going to do it. Seriously.
If you were 12 today,
yeah.
If you were 12 today, under the mandate, if you will, the social mandate of gender affirming care, was anybody going to tell you that you might grow out of this, or this awkwardness that you feel, or this even contempt, if you felt that toward your own body?
Yep.
Would that have been offered you as an option, or would it just be, let's get you on drugs and let's take you to the clinic?
Exactly. I'm not sure they wouldn't try to have taken me out of my parents' care, because I was such a tomboy and so determined.
Stop. What? Okay. Everybody needs to hear what she just said. I don't know, but that they wouldn't have taken me out of my parents' care. People in Robertson County, Springfield, Tennessee, who are listening right now say, well, that would never happen. It has happened.
Yes, it has.
It has happened. Parents have been taken out of children have been taken out of the parents' household because the parent refused to affirm the gender identity of their child.
Yep. It's happening, guys.
It is happening. So then when Vanderbilt University comes along and says, we make a lot of money doing this, and you need to push people in this direction. And look, if anyone's blood is boiling right now because you're defending Vanderbilt University, there is no defense. That's immoral, it's wicked, it's evil. And it needs to come to an end. You don't sit here and permanently alter the body of an 8-year-old because you rubber stamped, you skipped over this step in the middle of really trying to understand why that child thinks what they think, and really trying to understand. What just happened here in society? This is, Abigail Schreier, again, read the book if you've not read it. It's an excellent book, and it's just one of many that you can read. But, she's talking about the cult of transgenderism. This has exploded. Are we sitting here saying in the history of mankind? And by the way, this is all that 90% of it or whatever it is, it's young white girls. Okay, where is the common sense in looking statistically evaluating this over time? Can you not see this is a craze?
Mm-hmm. It's a trend.
And you know what? And if you think that I'm a hater
trend.
or I'm transphobic or I'm whatever, you are missing the point, and you're calling me names to make yourself feel better or something. But let's stop calling. Okay, folks, all of those who want to follow the science, could we just take a step back, and can we look at this in the larger context? And can we understand that here we are, and no, I realize people listening can't see what I'm doing, but all of a sudden there's a spike, and that spike, it's all these young white girls, and you think that that's normal?
It's become the trend for that specific group, is what he's saying. Yeah.
Craze is the word. It's a trend. It's a craze.
Yeah.
It's a whatever. Now, are there legitimately people who struggle with this? Absolutely. And people say, what do you know about, I bet you've never met with transgender. I have met with transgenders in my office, and the door has been open, and I've listened to what, people have had to say, and generally speaking, in the past, it was men who identified as women. I've got to think about this. I don't think I've ever had an older woman who transitioned to man. I think when I think about those that I've met with, it's always been men in various states. So you could be a total transition, or you could just identify as, dress as, act, whatever the case might be. It's always been man to woman. But today, statistically, the numbers are overwhelmingly young girls, young white girls, wanting to be boys, identifying as boys. And so at some point in time, it's not being a hater to say, hey, let's back up a little bit and let's see what might be driving this.
Right.
And let's look at what are the societal factors, what are the psychological aspects of this, before we give somebody life-altering drugs. And to sit here and say that these drugs are reversible is flat out not true.
We got to pause for a second because it is 8:00. I still have an ad to do, and we still haven't answered the best question. We went to this place where my husband's going, okay, you didn't even answer the question.
Well, it was unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, because
I don't have an answer to your question.
As you're looking at the Vanderbilt situation, there's going to be laws passed, and there's going to be unintended consequences. And so that was the point, just kind of unpack it here.
My wife sent me a message saying you went down a rabbit hole and you did not answer the question. The answer is, I don't have the answer to the question. They made it illegal to use your cell phone, and nobody contemplated the fact that nowadays, when was the law passed, and we went from flip phones to smartphones, where you've got Google Maps and mapping or whatever it might be.
And it's a safety thing for buses, really, and the whole age thing, too, happened because of that terrible, horrible accident.
Well, there you go. We're going to have the Laverne Vivio Act, which authorizes bus drivers everywhere.
Because my husband works in the buses.
Their GPS. We'll just have to figure out. They can't hold it in their hand. It's got to be mounted to the dash.
Leave me out of it. Leave me out of it. But
the U-turn Laverne. We'll call it the U-turn Laverne Act.
The Robertson County thing. Give it to Robertson County. Give them credit for it, because they're the ones going, hey, this has got to be fixed. And so
that's a great. That is a great point. Yeah.
So, but anyway,
here's the thing.
Unintended consequences from that.
And I know you said you got to take a break,
but
the bottom line is this: if someone's going to ignore the law, they're going to use their cell phone anyway.
Right.
So someone's saying, well, if you authorize them to use mapping, they'll end up, looking at text messages or whatever. You know what? If they're going to do it, they're going to do it,
they're
right?
Going to do it anyway.
So have it be mounted on the dash in the line of sight where you can see what you're doing, and why not? That's far better than a sheet of paper.
I mean, absolutely. Sheet of paper, it's dangerous, guys. But anyway, let's go ahead and let me do my last break. We need to talk about Corbin Creek Greenhouse Gifts and Gardening Center. And I mentioned that you go and watch veterans, go to Highland Rim to see what's going on at Veterans Motorplex. I encourage you to watch the Facebook page to really keep up to date on what's going on with Corbin. I try to always check it before I do that. I just went on there and checked to see if they've adjusted their hours, because we're into fall now, and they will adjust their hours. Their hours still listed on Facebook as being 7 days a week from 9 to 6. You're going to see that they're going to pull those hours back a little bit as we get on into the colder months and things settle down. But the bottom line is they're open throughout the year. They're always going to be your stop if you need some kind of a house plant, if you need something just to bring some life in when things start kind of dwindling in the winter. Go and get some succulents and some things just to kind of keep that life in your house. And they're also your source for CBD. If you are looking for CBD to see if it will help you, it has been a great asset to me with my arthritis. And this is Robertson County CBD. So if somebody's told you to check out CBD like my doctor did, go and check it out, because this way you're going right to the source and you're getting exactly what you intended. The salve that they have, they make it right there in the house. Miss Jane, Miss Amy, they make it. It is great stuff. It's good for bug bites. It's good for aches and pains. They've got coffees infused with CBD. It is great, great stuff. And they are, again, your CBD source. They're your houseplant source during the cold weather months. And they've also got beautiful petunias right now for your fall color. Go and see them today. You can call them at 615-384-3185, 615-384-3185. They're at 4920 Highway 161, 4920 Highway 161. Great friends and great sponsors of this program. And when you connect with them, always tell them that U-Turn sent you. Anyway, so we're going to wrap up the show here. Kerry Roberts is in the house. Senator Kerry Roberts. My question, he said, really no answer, but we got to do something about it. We keep going back to talking about all in their wisdom they become fools. That's Romans 1:22, and that's just a passage to go in. This is nothing new, is my point. This is nothing new, that we think we're so smart that we get stupid sometimes. Just saying. So, and that's our scripture, Romans 1:22, and that's what we keep referring to. Any closing thoughts there, Senator?
Yes, I think.
Take your time. We're good.
I'm going to say, okay, tell everybody what hat I'm wearing, okay?
You are wearing Indiana hat.
And so I'm wearing Indiana hat in honor of Tom Allen, who is the Indiana University football coach, who, by the way, just got humiliated on national TV by Cincinnati, but I use a basketball school. Well, I don't know if that's true either. But he's built a football program all around the culture of what he calls LEO, love each other, football. And I said this the other day on a radio show. I said, you know what? If a football coach can build a culture, and that is an expression of his faith. He is a believer. He's a Christian, and that's an expression of his faith. He's teaching these young men to love each other, and it's not too unlike what Rick Barnes is doing with UT and the basketball program. But you know what? If he can do it in football, if Rick Barnes can do it in basketball, then we can do it in politics, and we can do it in our public life, our public discourse. Just because we disagree with each other doesn't mean that we have to stop loving each other. And that has been a real problem, is that if you and I have differing beliefs, I get to where I despise you, and that just doesn't need to happen. And we've got to see other people, whether we disagree with them or not, as children of God. And that doesn't mean that we just turn a blind eye to things that we disagree with, but how we disagree is so critically important. And what did our mothers all told us? What if you don't have anything nice to say nothing at all? And there are a lot of times where we just need to kind of shrug our shoulders and move on, and let it go, and let's talk about what we're for and not what we're against. And we talk about gender affirming care. What I care about with children, I care that children get aligned with who they are. And you know what? Our identity is not in our gender. Our identity is in Jesus Christ.
Amen. And
someone says, that's good for you. You believe in Jesus. I don't. Where's my identity? Well, your identity is still God created you. I don't believe in God. That doesn't change whether God created you or not. That doesn't change whether God exists. And if you don't believe in God, that breaks my heart. But what do you believe in? Why are we here? What, how did all this happen? If you think this was a primordial soup where where did that come from?
Yeah, ask yourself the question.
Yeah, and
don't stop asking questions.
Yeah. So I think it's so important to love people, even when we disagree. And I mean, someone may have heard this morning, just think I'm a hater and I'm this and I'm that and I'm the other. But what I care about is I care that people find meaning in their life. They find joy. They find peace. We don't say shalom a lot, but what an incredible word. All that it conveys, all that it means. And that's what I wish on people is shalom. I want people to find peace, contentment, joy, happiness, goodness, all contentment, all these wonderful, wonderful things. And, and I will say this, people that love Jesus, tend to do really good things in society. And you know what? Let's make it okay to talk about Jesus. Let's make it okay to talk about God. And you know what? Don't expect it's so funny because people expect the government to do all these things for them that we ought to be doing for each other. So it's, government's role is to protect our liberty, not to be the church. It's kind of funny how many people don't like God or don't believe in God, then turn around and I got Matthew 25 when we looked at Medicaid expansion. I got Matthew 25 shoved in my face so many times that I finally just started asking people, "Oh, I didn't know you were a Christian." Well, I'm not, but you said you are. Matthew 25 says, "Oh, okay. So you want our government to be a theocracy then?" Yeah.
So that's the thing. I so much of what you said. I'm putting things up on my wall at the school, and so now I'm going to put LEO.
LEO.
LEO's going up there, and and something else. What you said about shalom. It was in my devotional this morning from Christy McClellan. She was talking about people when they hear shalom, they think it's just peace. No, it's a completion. It's being content, and it's being the fullness of life, and that's what breaks God's heart is when things break your shalom, and that is what is sin to him, anything that breaks your shalom. I love how she said that.
So we said John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus said, but I've come to give life and give it to the full. And this life to the full to me is shalom, and I just that's what I wish for people.
Shalom.
That's what I long that they would have. That's what I hope that they would find. And anyone who's struggling with anything, whether it's financial, whether it's political, whether it's gender, whether it's depression, whatever it is that someone's going through, what I hope for them is that they find that. And I'm just going to tell you, at this point in my life, I really have come to the conclusion the only way that you'll find that in a lasting manner is to come to terms with the fact that you were created by a creator. You were created for a purpose, and when you find that creator and you find that purpose, then you find your meaning in life.
And your shalom. And with that, God bless. Have a wonderful day. And Senator Kerry Roberts, you'll enjoy having him here with us. As long as we can kind of keep in line with his schedule, we'll talk to Jim. But typically on the 4th or maybe the last Monday, it's going to kind of slide with that. Last Monday. So that's what we're working on with Senator Kerry Roberts. Thank you for joining us, Senator, as always. Tomorrow, Joy Wassell is going to be here from Decisions, Choices, and Options. One of my favorites. God bless. Have a wonderful day. This is 1100 WSGI.